Hello and welcome back to Season 5 of Porcelain Peak, a strange and scary podcast featuring news, trivia, and deep dive main discussions into the odd and unusual. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony, and I'm joined by 30 minutes of black screen, a.k.a. John, and Anthony.
And just blood-curdling screams.
I want my mommy! Anyway, this week for news, we're going to share a new direction that Blumhouse is taking. Then we're going to play some trivia. I believe you're streaking.
2 peaks streaking.
No whammies, no whammies, no whammies.
And for our main discussion, we are finishing up Found Footage February, talking
Thank God. That's all I gotta say.
Unfriended and the Outwaters. So stay tuned for that, and we'll go ahead and get started with that chop talk.
Why don't you take an axe and chop it open?
Before we jump into the news, Anthony, John, how you fellas doing? It hasn't been too long. It's been a week.
Yeah.
Feels like less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not feeling stained.
I'm doing really well. I had a good time last night because I went to go see Cocaine Bear. Heard about this?
Cocaine Bears?
Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, I have seen this, and I have not seen it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, you came prepared to do a little review by doing several lines of cocaine yourself.
Do you want some?
No, I'm all set.
Oh, okay. I know a guy.
He's a bear. He's got about 50 kilos in his tummy. He's willing to share.
But I will give my glowing review of this film. It is batshit crazy.
Okay.
Probably more like bear shit crazy, but I digress. Very violent.
Do bears shit?
Yeah.
I thought they plugged it all up.
Well, we know they shit because they use Charmin.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
Mm.
And they only shit at the Vatican.
It's very funny. Like I said, very, 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 very violent.
I'm just imagining the Pope now. So, what's up with all these bears? Shitting all over.
Do I go to your forest and shit?
And it's as advertised. There's a bear does a lot of cocaine and gets into some shenanigans.
So, since there's a dearth of bear-themed shit in theaters right now, what made you choose Cocaine Bear over Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey?
I think it's playing in Modesto, is it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if it is, and if it was, I probably still wouldn't have seen it.
It didn't really look like... Yeah, objectively, if I looked at the two of them, like, Cocaine Bear looks
Like a movie.
fun. Winnie the Pooh or whatever, like, the trailer didn't look entertaining at all.
Yeah.
It didn't even look like it would be, like, a fun, stupid horror movie.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it because, I've been hearing really good things about it, and I was like, should I go see it? Should I not go see it?
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
How was
Check it out.
Ray? Wasn't it his last movie, Leota?
So he wasn't in it very much. He was maybe about 5-10 minutes screen time.
Yeah.
Kind of scattered throughout the film. But he was still Ray up until the end,
Crazy. Well, at least it was a decent movie for, like, I would hate for your last movie to be, like, just complete garbage.
Yeah, I think that it was a
Wait,
fun
what's
performance.
happening to John after this? You said it was his last movie?
Yep. Hold this bear trap for me.
Hold this cocaine. Do not eat it.
Let me know if it smells funny.
Well, since you came prepared with a mini review, I'm going to do the same because I mentioned on, I think, last week's episode that I had yet to see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and that I would return with my thoughts on it. I did end up seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Did you guys realize that the word Quantumania has Ant-Man in it? In the word. Quantumania.
I don't think so.
Ant-Mania. Ant-Man-ania. Anyway, saw this movie, and after a lot of really, really deep thought and soul searching, it was fine. Yeah. you guys want to talk about the news?
Basically what we said last week.
Yeah, it was about what I expected.
Yeah.
And MODOK's my favorite Avenger, so that's all I got to say. How you doing? You have a good week? Yeah.
Yeah, it was fine.
Besides the movies that you had to watch.
Sorry,
and the nightmares that they caused.
I'm so distracted by the thought of saying no, this is America's ass to MODOK's little fucking frog butt.
I'm good. Just
Just chilling.
doing this shit.
Chilling.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's a slow news week, so Chop Talks. That's why we brought these reviews.
Yeah.
We actually didn't have anything planned, but
Yeah.
there's only 4 little pieces of news.
do.
As you mentioned earlier, Blumhouse, they got some
Blums.
new shit. They always got some new shit. What was I watching the other night? There was something I was watching that had a film producer in it, and I was like, this motherfucker is Jason Blum for sure, but I don't remember what it was. But it was hilarious. Anyway, Bloody Disgusting has reported that Blumhouse, the multimedia company, is launching a new subsidiary to produce and publish video games. The company has appointed Zach Wood as president. Blumhouse Games will partner with independent game developers to bring their creative vision to life via original horror-themed games for console, PC, and mobile audiences. In the spirit of its film business, Blumhouse Games will target indie-budget games below $10 million to enable innovation and pushing creative boundaries.
They should call it Blum Console.
Yeah, the Blum box.
I like this idea.
Stick a finger in my Blum box.
Our idea or
The idea of them doing a game studio, because the only other film studio that I know, aside from like obviously like things like Warner Brothers, doesn't count because they've just been a multimedia company
I
forever.
think Annapurna.
Yeah.
Annapurna.
And they make some pretty,
Annapurna.
they make some pretty fun games.
Who does?
Annapurna.
Yeah,
And that's a movie studio?
yeah.
Yeah, I think they've done some Sophia. Maybe it's a Sophia Coppola thing,
Uh-huh.
or she's done some movies. With
But yeah,
Annapurna.
they made 12 Minutes, which was hot on the internet for a little while, and then obviously Stray. Had a ton of fun with Stray.
That's a game you didn't play, right?
He's played a little of it.
I played a couple hours of it. It's super fun. It's really cute. Makes me a little bit sad, but yeah, I mean, this seems like a good move for Blumhouse because indie horror is the shit right now. That's where it's at if you're looking for decent to good horror stuff, and it makes sense for them to follow that same model that they follow with their movies. I'm just, is Blumbox or is it Blum Station? Should it be like the Blum Station 4?
Blum Console.
I'm sticking with Blumbox.
I'm partial to Blumtendo Switch.
The Blumtari.
Yeah.
So are you guys fans of Hell? You guys fans of boys?
What?
What about Hellboys?
Hellboys?
You guys like a Hellboy
Yeah.
or 2 or 3?
Of the Perlman variety? Yeah.
I watched a video of David Harbour's house.
Oh, he keeps a picture, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he does.
of
He has it,
Hellboy.
like, in his closet, like behind stuff. He's like, so I never forget, or some shit. He was like talking shit about how bad it was.
I love him, which is why it just made me so sad watching that movie and just being like, this isn't even like
Remotely fun.
it doesn't even, like the effects aren't finished. It's not even edited anyway. Whole different thing.
yeah. He's a pretty weird guy, but he seems pretty fun.
Yeah.
The news is that Millennium Media is developing another live-action Hellboy reboot, this time with Brian Taylor, the director of Crank, Gamer, Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, and Mom and Dad. So,
Never even heard of that. Last
stellar
one.
fucking track record. I think that's the one
my.
with Nick Cage.
Crank is dope. They say Crank or Crank 2. Either way, those movies are fucking nuts.
No, High Voltage was done by the guys who did... Oh, yeah. I think... No, because I think that was two brothers. But anyway, yeah, Crank is dope. I actually just watched that recently, and that movie is so fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like I would love to see a Saw sequel with Chev Chelios, with Jason Statham's character from Crank, having to go through. And that's part of the trap, is that he has like a fucking electric heart battery or something. Anyway, the movie is supposed to be written by Mike Mignola, who created the Hellboy character, the comics.
I never really fucked with the old ones.
I thought the Guillermo ones were fun.
Yeah, I've never been a huge Hellboy movie fan as much as I love Del Toro. Like, aesthetically, they're really cool. But every time I've watched them, I've just been kind of like, these are all right. But I've seen both of the Perlman ones a few times. And then I watched the David Harbour one once and was like, never again.
Yep,
But I
agreed.
wanted to, It was one of those movies where I felt like I needed to watch it so that I could understand why it was so bad, instead of being like, I just heard this is shitty, so I'm not even going to bother. But this one is going to be titled Hellboy: The Crooked Man.
Damn.
Aping off of Juan over here. But yeah, it is going to be based on the popular Hellboy miniseries The Crooked Man from 2008. Production is starting next month in Bulgaria, so they're fast tracking this shit. And it is going to be rated R, and it is being the talk is that it's supposed to be a folk horror movie. So, do with that what you will.
Do they have a Hellboy?
Not as far as any of this has confirmed.
Weird.
I mean, honestly, I would be totally cool with them bringing David Harbour back to do it again and just being like, try again. See it, because I didn't think he was the bad part of that movie.
No, absolutely
I think
not.
everything else around it was the bad part of that movie. So, including Mila Jovovich.
Easy.
Sorry.
Easy.
What, you going to get Paul W.S. Anderson to come Mortal Kombat me?
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
So, yeah, that's Hellboy. So, I had mentioned... I think on a previous episode that show 1899 got canceled after one season, the one that was by the creators of Dark.
Yes.
Well, in a weird move here, Netflix canceled that show, but then is continuing their contract with those creators, and they are now going to be making an adaptation of the horror comic book series Something is Killing the Children, which will go to Netflix. It'll be directed or created by Baron Bo Odar and Janchi Fries.
Dude, they piss me off. Netflix. Yeah, they bought the rights to this book that I read and your wife read, called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and it's like this weird murder mystery, like Agatha Christie Knives Out style. Mm-hmm. But the person goes into like different people's consciousness and relives the same day, so it's kind of weird. It sounds super dope.
Cell.
And I'm like, dude, that sounds perfect. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that. And then they bought the rights like 3 years ago and then canceled it. I'm like, why are you doing like now you're canceling stuff before you even release it?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like
it honestly feels like they have a meeting at the beginning of each week and can just go like, and they all got like Eternal Sunshine of everything that happened in the previous week or months. And they just go like, okay, how do we want to run Netflix this week? What shows do we want to continue and what do we not?
How do you go into this with these creators? And if you're these creators, like, how do you give a shit?
That's what I'm really curious about. Yeah, it seems really.
That's the short answer.
Yeah, but Dark. I mean, they gave them Dark, but wouldn't you be pissed if like, yeah, we're gonna cancel your show, but you want to do something else? It's like, I don't know.
And that I had this realization today where, because I was talking to my boss about a project that I've been working on, and it's this whole thing, and I am really, really passionate about it, and it's a branding project for this like Wreckfest thing that's happening by the river over here, and they had this terrible fucking logo and branding and everything. I don't know if I should say that on a podcast that somebody might hear, but it wasn't great. So I rebranded the whole thing and got like really into it, but I was like, if I send you this logo, like I have very specific guidelines of how basically I realized that I like to have full creative control of the things that I work on. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I would be able to survive making movies or TV shows if a studio was involved, because the second they were like, oh no, we're going to get involved and start changing things around or introducing this or canceling this thing, I would be like, okay, I'm never making anything again. Yeah, I would just be like...
The Fantastic Four dude, didn't he like get all pissed off and ended up turning into like a hermit and like doing
same with Suicide Squad,
doing like everything on his own, like in a dark room?
Yeah,
it's like, well, it's
he
like,
made like that Capone movie, and then that was like the last thing. But
it's like people get pissed, and then it's like we're like, why'd you get so mad? It's like, because like I created this and they shit on it. Like I don't know.
It's like we're gonna cancel your original, even though a lot of people argued that 1899 ripped some elements off of some graphic novel. I know that whole thing was disproven, but they're going to cancel your original idea that you put all this work into and obviously spent a lot of money and time on, and then go like, but you can adapt this comic book instead. So it's not even going to be their original material. The comic book I did try to start, or I intended to start reading. I read the first page and then got distracted by something else at work, but because I shouldn't be reading comic books at work, but
allegedly
I was just checking it out to see what it was like. Anyway, so a little synopsis for the series is it is a series about a small town plagued by monsters that eat children and a mysterious young woman who has special powers to combat these creatures. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited because the premise of the comic sounds cool, and these are people I like, and I like the stuff that they put out. But yeah, I'm very curious how much of this is like Netflix going, well, you're still in contract with us for a certain number of years, so you have to make, if you're going to make anything, it has to be with us. Or if it was like, okay, because I really doubt that they gave them more money for this than they did for $18.99, because that was part of Netflix's excuse for why they canceled $18.99, was that it was just unfeasible to continue making, supposedly, for them. But they'll keep making, what was that, Red Notice sequels or whatever the fuck, or the Gray Man, I don't know, whatever they're
all the other fucking shit that they're making.
What are your thoughts on all that?
Like I said, I think that the streaming services in general, but Netflix leading the way, is just shitting the bed left and right. And I think that it's putting us in a position where studios, that aren't built into this like streaming platform centric territory, and then obviously cable providers are all just fucking rubbing their hands together as like if you want your thing to continue to live on and exist and be able to be made, like maybe you should get it on TV instead. Maybe you should get it syndicated. Maybe you should do all these other things.
I don't necessarily know how, because after you mentioned that the other day, I was thinking about it a bit more, and I talked to my boss about it a little bit too. And I don't necessarily know if cable was any better in terms of this, because even if your show was syndicated, there were episodes that people just never fucking, like, they could just choose, like, I'm randomly going to pull these episodes and never show these, and I'm only going to syndicate these 20 episodes out of the 200 this show has. Really? So like there were, and on top of that, like, it wasn't a whole library you could return to at any time unless you had a DVR and you were recording things. So it was still like you had to hope that you caught things at a certain time and all that. So
or physical media.
Yeah, and then also that's the more crazy thing is, like, I was gonna say, not even getting into what we talked about with Arrested Development and other shows like Mrs. Fletcher on HBO, that Catherine Hahn show that had like one season. HBO took that off, and it doesn't exist on physical media or anywhere else. So it's just like, here's a whole show that somebody made that's gone now.
It's gonna encourage more pirating.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I told my boss.
Bootlegs.
He was like, what are people going to do? And I was like, well, they're not going to go back to cable, because the shittiest part of this is that streaming successfully killed cable. Yes, there are people who still have cable, but it's not the way that the majority of the population is consuming their media now. So they killed it, but didn't have a good plan in place for how to, like, in the long run, replace it.
Yeah.
So they were just like, we just want to make sure we kill cable and then fuck up our own thing all along the way, because we didn't take the time to figure it out.
It's gonna be like back in the day when people had bootleg copies of VHSs. I know that didn't super apply to us. It was kind of being phased out when we were up and coming. But now people are gonna start bootlegging like old shows. Like, here, you want that Arrested Development, man? Which is crazy to think about. And it's weird that Netflix is might lose its own show and then not even keep the seasons that it has the rights to. Like, they're not gonna keep 4 and 5 on their platform. Yeah. They're just gonna be like, okay, bye. We don't have 1 through 3, so see you later.
Yeah, I think the thing about cable that I can kind of see where you're coming from in terms of, I think that cable was more structured so that if something like this, because, like, all these different channels were always like, running a pilot or a season of a show, and then they'd sometimes cancel something midway through and then not show the rest of the episodes of the season. Like, I was just watching a video about Joey, the Friends spinoff, that you can't find that second season literally anywhere, and they just stopped showing the episodes at a certain point because it was tanking. So this has always been going on, but I feel like there was a bit more transparency about like why and how they were doing that, and you could see the ratings and you could see the numbers and go, oh, okay, it makes sense why they made this decision. And then I think there was a lot more protection for the creators in terms of, like, still getting money and that kind of thing. And in this, there aren't as many rules. It's still a lot of, like, Wild West shit going on, and every service is operating differently, and they're all trying to figure out loopholes for saving money of like, okay, well, it turns out we don't have to pay residuals for this show if it's not on our platform, so we just get rid of it and then don't have to pay any of the people who were involved, if we had any sort of contract with them, which maybe wouldn't necessarily be the case if it was a cable show or a network show or whatever. But it's crazy, and I hate it.
If I were a creator who was making anything for any of these platforms, I mean, I wouldn't be signing a contract for anything that didn't require them to keep my content on their platform for a certain amount of time. I mean, I think that you can't say like you have to allow me to make X amount of episodes or whatever, but if you are going to give me the structure that I need to make the content, but then remove it so that way you don't have to pay me. Mm-hmm. That's not something that's going to fly with me. You know, I think that there are a bunch of creators who didn't have that problem because it was like, oh, Netflix is too big to fail. And now that they're starting to fail, it's like, oh, well, we pull all the things off so that way you don't get paid anymore.
So fucking weird, dude.
Yeah, now it's gotten to a point where the selling point for a show is saying, don't worry, there's going to be another season, so that people feel like they can get invested in you know, like it's big news now to be like, oh, fuck yeah, this show's getting a second season, when before it'd be like, I mean, yeah, if it's supposed to be a multi-season show, you would hope that it goes for as many seasons as it takes. Or, you know, it used to be, you know, shows would run for fucking 15 seasons when they didn't have any business running that long.
And shows used to be like 26 episodes. Or around there, like 22, 23, you know, in between like 20 and 26.
But also,
then,
I'm sure way cheaper. Like,
right, but now
that's the
it's
other
like,
problem too, is that everything besides
15
reality
maybe?
TV is like fucking crazy expensive because they want every TV show to feel like a 6-hour movie or an 8-hour movie or whatever.
It's wild.
No complaints as the consumer. Like I think watching a show that's like an 8-hour movie is fucking pretty sick.
Yeah. Speaking of fuck you, pay me though. You guys fans of Donald Glover? Mm-hmm. The notorious Childish Gambino. Mm-hmm. Well, he's got a new show coming out.
Wow.
That he's producing. But Janine Neighbors and Donald Glover are coming out to Prime Video with their new show, Swarm, that is coming out March 17th. And this is about a young woman whose obsession with a pop star takes a dark turn. It's been compared to Stephen King's Misery, but through a modern lens. And it is set between 2016 and 2018 and follows a character named Dre, played by Dominique Fishback, an obsessed fan of the world's biggest pop star who sets off on an unexpected cross-country journey. The series is said to be inspired by Beyonce and her rabid fan base. So
that sounds kind of tight.
Oh, Swarm, because they call her like the Beehive or whatever.
That makes sense. I didn't even put those things together. Because
I know pop culture. If anybody here knows pop culture,
I understand that reference.
Yeah, it's me.
I'm the problem. It's me.
My brain went there. I wanted to see if his brain would go there, and
no idea what you're talking about. Because as we all know, I don't know pop culture.
But yeah, that's all the news that I felt was fit to mention.
Right on.
So yeah, slow week, but. Let's get into some fucking trivia, guys. How you feeling about doing that?
Sounds good.
I'm feeling like streaking, you know?
Cut into trivia now.
That Christmas house of wax, the fog, piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
Before we dive into Trivial Pursuit, yes,
Like Jason Statham. When he used to be an Olympic diver back in the day.
Well, I've never seen that movie. Olympics? Anyway, we have a bonus trivia question for you guys. Last week it was, what is the origin of evil? Ouija?
It's Ouija, yeah. Our favorite game. Yeah, so the question was, where does the word Ouija come from? Or where does it supposedly come from, according to the makers of the game?
I said from the movie Okja.
From Akcha, which I
And
think
you
is
said-
honestly a very well-educated and accurate
I
guess.
think I said Peru.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you were just like,
You're like, South America.
Yeah. And then I said that the common misconception was that it was a combo of the word yes in French and yes in German.
Yeah.
Oui, yeah.
We are.
So according to the inventor, Charles Kennard, who made the Ouija board, he says that when he first created the board, he used it to communicate with a spirit and ask the spirit what he should call the board. And according to him, the spirit told him, call it Ouija or Ouija, and told him it was an Egyptian word that meant good luck, which is not even remotely accurate in terms of it being an Egyptian word or meaning anything close to good luck. But, you know, if you didn't know the whole Ouija board thing was a little bit of a con before this,
Whoa,
you do now. I mean, it's the origin of evil.
It's the origin of evil.
It's how the paranormal activity happens. But yeah, so I do have a new trivia question for this week.
Oh, right.
Since we're talking about a new release with the Outwaters, I thought that my trivia question this week would be about a different kind of release.
Oh, God.
So your question is, what Disney film was the first to include a fart?
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
Is it live action or animated? Or do you not want to answer?
I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
What was the first Disney film to include a fart?
Interessante.
You're going through and you're like, okay, did any of the dwarves fart?
Let me ask you this. What was the first episode of Porcelain Peak to include a fart?
The first one, I'm
Episode
guessing.
one, yeah. And everyone says, baby. Lucky they don't have smell.
The deadliest ones are the ones you don't hear. They mostly come at night.
Mostly.
I can't even fucking fathom a guess. Something silly.
Yeah.
I don't know. The Great Mouse Detective.
Okay, so the first fart was in The Great Mouse Detective.
I'm going to say Disney's Flubber.
I didn't know that was written by John Hughes for the longest time.
Flubber?
Yeah.
I didn't know for the
Fucking
longest time
weird.
that it was a remake
Yeah.
of like an older, maybe black and white movie. Maybe
I
not.
don't know.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But yeah, let us know.
Let us.
Send in your best flatulent guesses. And I'll let
Don't
you guys...
be silent or deadly.
Yeah, I'll
us
let you
know.
guys know next week which Disney film had the first fart.
Sweet. John, let's get started. What's that first category, son?
Monster.
Cool. We're going to go through reading to each other with me to John, John, Anthony back to me until we crown a winner.
Ain't that a
Or
typical
winners.
fashion?
Monster category question for you, JB, is in 28 Days Later from 2002. To whom does the taxi the protagonists use belong? Who's the taxi belong to? Is it Jim Selena, Frank, or Major Henry West?
Oh, rage.
Say it belongs to Frank.
That is correct, and you're on the board.
Boop. That's kind of a slam dunk, but also reminds me that I'm due for a rewatch. It's been a little while. I need to
It's been a little while.
cash in.
Yeah, I need to rewatch it and then finally get around to watching 28 Weeks because I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing. And I've heard a lot of people say that they enjoy it. Some people say as much as the first one.
I disagree with that, but it is still good.
Well, you can take it up with the internet, John.
It goes the like action route,
a little more.
like the aliens.
Yeah, still plenty of
If I
knowledge.
don't get to see Cillian Murphy's Peaky Blinder,
Just wait until the third one comes out, and then we'll watch them all.
I mean,
ever
I guess
happens.
that's supposed to happen. Yeah, we're going to be getting I Am Legend 2 before that happens. Which I forgot to mention last week should be called I Am Legend, TOO. I too am a legend.
So you go, we are legends.
We are legends, yeah.
Anthony and Fright Night from 1985. That's the end of the question. No. Which character is turned into a vampire? Charlie Brewster.
Evil Ed.
It's Evil Ed. Yeah, Evil Ed's already. He's on the card.
You're so cool, Brewster. Tone.
Yep.
Who was the author of the novel?
Oh no.
I know this is going to be tough for you. Novels. Author of the novel that Jaws from 1975 adapts.
I don't know this. Let me just check my phone. I do not know. I'll say Robert Bloch.
Oh, so close. It was Peter Benchley.
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, and when he went to the gym, everybody called him Peter Bench Press.
All right, great. So you guys are on the board.
Yep.
And I am not, and we're moving into the
Eyeball
monster
zone.
category.
No.
No.
The sound and vision.
Sound and vision category.
That doesn't exist.
The I Love Lucy category.
No.
John, it is
No, that's the brain. It's
gore.
Gore/disturbing.
It is indeed gore/disturbing.
Wow.
Got it first
try. In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. For a second. Hey,
Curveball, though. You stupid bitch.
Who?
This is pretty funny.
Who prevents Aaron's escape at the end of the film?
I'm gonna say Leatherface.
It is Sheriff Hoyt.
Whatever. That movie was one eye and out the other.
That's the Jessica Biel remake?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Michael Bay prevented her from leaving the set. She just tried to walk right off. She was like, no, I'm done with this movie.
Yep, I'm gonna cash out. Anthony, in Cabin in the Woods from 2012, how often must the ritual sacrifice be performed to appease the evil gods?
That's a good question.
Every
Day you're hustling.
Every morning, there's a halo hanging from the corner. I'm gonna say every, I don't know, 27 years.
It's annually.
That was my first thought. Was that they have to do it every year?
It is
annually.
Annually.
We landed on the moon. Yeah, and then I was like, oh, maybe they were doing like a Pennywise reference with 27 years.
I can catch up right here. Here we go.
Fuck. Okay, for your sound and vision category, Hostel Part 3 from 2011 changes the primary location of the film series from Slovakia to what American city?
You got a one in like, I want to say like 40 or 50,000 chance here.
American?
Don't forget the cities on Mars.
Yeah, true.
American. What's I don't know.
Manatees.
Chicago.
Ooh, shit. You don't know the classic saying, what hostels in Vegas stays in Vegas?
Is 3 take place in Vegas?
Apparently, according to this
Interesting.
card. I haven't seen any of the sequels.
Weird. Oh, damn it.
Even though I was just, absolutely blown away by visionary director Eli Roth's Hostel 1.
All right. Well, you guys are still tied at 1, and I got 0, and we are moving into psychological. Correct, John?
Indeed, yes.
Yay! Your question is, in what war was the blind man blinded in Don't Breathe from 2016?
The War for the Planet of the Apes.
It's the war that takes place on the planet from Avatar.
I think he was blinded in the Secret Wars.
I'm going to say the Gulf War.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Damn.
Oh, shit.
He teed it up.
It's because you play a lot of golf, right?
Not as much as he'd like.
Yeah, definitely not as much as I'd like. Anthony, what was the name of the actor who played protagonist Paul Conroy in Buried from 2010?
Oh, bitch.
Yeah.
That's going to be the Deadpool himself, Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds is correct.
Nice.
I had a split second where I said it and then was like, fuck, was it not Ryan Reynolds? Was it like, I don't know, John Krasinski or some shit? But you think Wolverine's going to wear his costume in this new Deadpool?
What costume?
The Wolverine costume.
Like the yellow?
Yeah.
No.
Just curious. Tone, what is the name of the hotel the Torrance family are caretakers to in The Shinning from 1980?
Is it the Overlook Hotel?
Ooh, sorry, it's just Overlook Hotel.
We dropped the lead. The just Overlook Hotel.
Yeah. Yep, you got it.
Okay. I was like, is that right? Or
Is
what?
that the
Is it the Stanley?
That's the real one.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys got 2s and I got 1, and we're moving in to
Paranormal.
paranormal.
It is indeed paranormal.
Okay, John, who directed The Innkeepers from 2011?
That'd be Ty West.
That is correct.
Oh, I thought you said Ty Weist.
Diane Weiss.
Diane Weiss.
All right. That's a lead for you, huh?
Yeah, temporarily. Anthony, in Insidious from 2010,
Oh, hell yeah.
Dalton is one of how many Lambert children?
They thought this was a trick question because nobody remembers that there's a baby and a brother. There's 3 kids, right?
Indeed, there are 3 children.
Yeah. Even you didn't think that was right.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, okay.
We just watched it.
Nobody remembers that unmemorable middle child.
So if I'm being honest, when I started that sentence, I was going to go, there's Dalton and his brother. And then as I was saying it, I was like, oh shit, there's a baby, huh?
Yeah, some creepy baby shit.
Wonder what that baby's up to now. Tone, in Annabelle from 2014, Annabelle is both a person and
place.
what inanimate object?
It does not say that. That's the question?
Yeah. Back to our old argument about inanimate objects.
A doll.
It is indeed a doll. That's that's fucking dumb.
Annabelle is both a person, a place, and a thing.
And an age-old demon.
All right. Well, you guys got 3 and I got 2. And we're moving into the killer category. Mm-hmm. John, who directed The House on Sorority Row from 1983, as well as episodes of Lizzie McGuire and Even Stevens.
Actual cannibal
What?
Shia LaBeouf. That's a whack question compared to was Annabelle a doll?
It would even go as far as to be like, yes or no. Give you options. True or false.
Annabelle wants to know, do you like me?
I pulled my skin back with the card, and I got a little blood. I got blood.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, shit. I mean, I'll say Bruce Campbell?
It is Mark Ronson.
I knew it wasn't Bruce Campbell, but
You were Mark wrong, son.
yeah. What a shit question. Anthony, what words are tattooed on the right and left hands, respectively, of Reverend Harry Powell in The Night of the Hunter from 1955?
Have you seen this?
Yep.
Oh.
I feel like it's love and hate, but I'm not 100% sure.
I've never seen it.
It's
That's like a good guess.
It's a really good movie.
I'm going to need a final answer.
Yeah, I'm gonna say love and hate.
It is indeed Love and Hate.
Ooh, it's hate and love.
I was like, or it could be good and evil. I was trying to remember, but yeah, super fucking good movie. Highly
Hello
recommend
and
it.
Goodbye.
Yeah, that was my first thought too.
For the lead,
Yeah.
but not necessarily the win.
I know I'm not getting too big for my britches yet. They fit just right. Tone, the original Michael Myers mask in Halloween from 1978 was created using an actual Halloween mask of what actor?
William Shatner.
He did what to her?
I did. William did.
Shatner. I hardly know her.
All right. So you got 3.
And you got 3.
I got 3, and you got 4.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're moving into international.
Yes.
Who run
John.
the world?
In Martyrs from 2008, what are the 2 requirements for the so-called martyrs?
Negative COVID test. And a credit score above 600.
So they have to be tortured.
I love that when you say it and he's just not doesn't even look at you. Like doesn't give you any indication of whether that was even remotely right. Keep floundering.
Oh, what could the other thing be?
Don't forget to cup the balls. What are you doing over there?
Fushigi.
Because it's not like they don't have to be a virgin or anything like that.
Touch for the very first time.
Like a surgeon. Do you know that was actually Madonna's idea? That was the only one of his parody songs where the actual artist is the one who gave him the idea to do it.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, like one of her
What a
friends,
legend.
I guess, like offhand mentioned to her, or she mentioned it offhand in a conversation, like a surgeon would be really funny. And then that somehow got passed along to him. And he was like, is it cool if I do it? And yeah.
She was like, nah.
And they have to be innocent.
They have to be young and female. You overthought that one.
Yeah.
Tough break, though.
It's also the requirements for a successful TikTok career. Am I right? Boom. Topical.
Womp womp. Anthony, what is the name of the ghost that protagonist Carlos sees in The Devil's Backbone from 2001?
What's the name of the ghost? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm.
That Carlos sees?
Like a ghost, yeah. Whoo. Spooked for the very first time.
Is it...
Like a ghost. There's no heartbeat next to mine. I was underneath the sheet,
Fernando.
feeling ethereal.
Guillermo.
It's Santi.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't have gotten that.
So you got 3, he got 4, and I have 3 right now.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm still in the game, but international's the hardest one. So
So if you get this, we're going to have a classic tie on our hands.
classic tie West.
Tone.
Yeah.
In The Host
Okay.
from 2006.
Getting a lot of the host questions recently.
Yeah. Good thing we watched it. I don't know. We'll see, depending on your answer.
Uh,
In The Host from 2006. Of what sport is Namju an acclaimed champion?
Champagne.
is it archery?
It is indeed archery.
Oh shit!
I was hoping maybe the Jason Statham Olympic diving would throw you off.
Yeah, woohoo! So we tied.
You did, yeah.
I came through. I thought I was gonna shit the bed again.
Fist me, brother.
Okay, let's move on. Let's get wrapped up for trivia.
And the show as a whole.
No holes, dude.
Finger my blum box.
Oh, God.
That is going to wrap it up for trivia. We hope that you enjoyed that. Anthony and I tied, so congratulations to us, John. Better luck next week, sir. And we'll go ahead and take a little break and get started with our main discussion.
If I could reach you, I'd be fisting you right now, bro. Trust me.
Cut the audio. Cut the
Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/porcelainpeak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more. Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/porcelainpeak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more.
Hey, you want to see something really scary?
Go. I want you to go on 3. Ready? 3.
3, 2, 3.
I went. You said
Oh.
3 and I went.
I didn't know that. Okay. Right on. Hey, welcome back to some more tomfoolery. We're going to get started with our main discussion, rounding off Found Footage February. And we're talking
Yeah.
about Unfriended and the Outwaters.
Don't have as much trouble this week saying that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it written.
Yeah, well, all I can say is fucking finally we're finished with Found Footage February.
I mean, I think there's still more meat on these bones if we had picked other movies. But
So I just wanted,
we had a good variety.
I wanted to one, put out an apology for a couple of the movies that I was like, we should definitely cover these because I've heard a lot of good things about them. But also, it's not my fault because I heard a lot of good things about them.
No one's
and
mad at you.
I was under the impression that Noroi specifically and one of these movies that we're going to be talking about would be a lot much more doper than they were. But what I also was happy about is that I mentioned last week that I had been having some good conversations with the folks over at the Horror Cafe podcast. Specifically, it is Erica from the Horror Cafe podcast, and she is a big fan of found footage. So she's been following our episodes, and she went and after listening to our episode about Noroi, she was like, I'm going to give it, a fair shot as a found footage fan and give you my opinion on it. And she did. And she did she's a real she also did the same with the Outwaters and gave me some nice little write-ups of her opinions on it, and it kind of solidified that it's not just that I'm not the biggest found footage person, because I was kind of by the end of this I was kind of thinking like maybe found footage just isn't really my thing because some of these movies,
I think there are some things that just hit, like Cloverfield or Wreck. Like there are some things that just really fucking do it.
But the cool thing about those two movies that you mentioned specifically is that they don't take an hour for stuff to happen. Like Cloverfield's pretty quick, and a Wreck starts happening like
Immediately.
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah. So
yeah. I also real quick wanted to give a shout out to Ben from Extreme Horror Replay. He made sure to send me his weird ass alarms that he has set on his phone to
because you were saying
because I was bitching about how Mika had like a 6:14 alarm set or something weird, and I was like, who the fuck sets their alarms for not like 6:15, 6:30 or regular intervals? And he showed me he had like a 1:11 in the morning and a bunch of random
how much
stuff,
do we
and
trust a guy that has an extreme horror podcast? Come on, man.
yeah, that's already I was just like, well, you know what, how about nobody asked you, fuck you. No, actually I was like, hey man, I've been wrong before, and maybe the alarm time wasn't the thing about that movie that I should have had a problem with. But I do think that in every one of these weeks we've at least had like what I would consider at least one gem of the horror of the found footage franchise.
I mean,
or the found footage genre.
As much as I didn't like one of the movies we watched, I wasn't bored by it. I was just like, I don't care about this. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So what you guys want to go Unfriended and then Outwaters?
Yeah, let's go
All
in
right.
chronological order.
So if you don't know too much about Unfriended, this is a found footage of sorts that takes place over Zoom, basically.
Yeah, so
Skype specifically.
Skype specifically.
Yeah, we're going all the way back to 2014, bro.
Dude.
This is time before Zoom.
First off, I'm gonna hit you with a complaint right off the rip.
Okay.
Skype didn't work that well, brother.
It didn't work that well in the movie. What do you mean?
But the fact that they were able to successfully get multiple calls with multiple people, like, are they all paying for long distance in this bitch? Skype was a fucking pain in the ass.
I mean, I think it's still that way with Zoom.
It was powered by ghosts.
Yeah, it felt very realistic to me. But I didn't know this until I was looking into this movie. So while we would consider, and most people would consider this part of the found footage genre, this style with the like screen captures of computers, which has become big with stuff like this and Host and searching and a bunch of other stuff, is actually called Screen Life. Is what the subgenre is called. So this is a 2014 Screen Life supernatural horror film.
We watched a similar film to
Friend Request.
Yeah.
We watched a movie called Friend Request.
Not for the I don't think for the show.
Wait, no, there was an older one that we watched where like the two were like they were the two were
that, and
wasn't it really low budget?
Yeah,
and,
it was just two people who were like on camera with each other the whole time.
It wasn't the Lovecraft one. It was
no, that was shit.
It was like the something Creek Chronicles or something weird like that.
Oh fuck! I'm so glad you mentioned it because when I was watching this, I was like, didn't we watch a stupid ass one?
Yeah, I think it was
that was like very. It was like the VHS version. It was just a very basic.
It was the Chronicles of Narnia, the Lion, the Witch, the Lion, the Witch, and the Web.
What?
The Lion, the Witch, and the Webcam. So
I don't want to do this anymore.
So this movie is directed by Levon Gabrazzi.
James.
Yes, Levon James Gabrazzi.
Bless you.
Looked into his almost a discography, his filmography. He has not directed anything else that I recognize. He did a movie in 2011 called Lucky Trouble. Then he did a movie called Yolki 2, then Yolki 3, then Unfriended, and then in 2017 he did a film called Rezo. So not 100% sure if any of his other movies are decent, but I kind of dug Unfriended. I mean, I had seen it before, so I knew that I was going to probably enjoy this one. John and I talked a little bit about this beforehand, but I think it was refreshing that this movie is as straightforward as it is.
It's simple. In a sea of movies that we've watched that have been overcomplicated, it's just a ghost trying to get revenge on the people that like ruined their life.
That led them to be a ghost, essentially.
Yes.
In a way. Yeah.
It had a
Classic
fun
ghost shit, yeah.
had a fun twist at the end. Like I thought that was interesting, and it had some really cool kills, surprisingly, for being some shit that's fucking shot through a webcam.
I wanted to feel it again, like we talked about with Paranormal Activity last week, so I turned all the lights off. I sat isolated and watched this, and I thought it was really effective. Like, I mean, I wasn't scared, but I could see being scared. You know what I mean?
I
I'm like,
remember
that's
it
as good as we get.
I remember it being worse, and like watching it this time, I was like, "This is kind of fun." Like I'm not mad at this. Like the performances aren't super great, but like I recognize some of the faces.
Some of them are bad, and some of them are okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought that everyone in the movie, for the most part, felt very authentic.
I didn't love the blonde woman or the redheaded woman.
Yeah, and a lot of the time the characters do devolve into just people screaming and
bickering.
being, super over the top and grating and annoying. But I thought that the way that they interacted, you could tell that they probably like actually hung out with each other outside of filming the movie. And there's not as much behind the scenes on this as there was for something like Blair Witch or whatever that we looked into. But similar to something like Blair Witch, the majority of this is improvised. The way that they did
Really?
Yeah, and the way that they did this is they're all in the same house except for I think one of the kids. I think the one that sticks his hand in the blender. They're all in the same house, and they just filmed in different rooms and had each actor decorate the room the way that they would decorate their own bedroom.
That's a really neat like little touch.
Yeah, and they would do little kind of Blair Witchy things, like have the producers on the side or like the stagehands on the side, and they would, when they needed somebody to like get scared by something or react to something, they would be like poking them from off screen. They originally were doing the movie in these long like one takes, but only for like 20 minutes 30 minutes at a time. And finally the lead actress, she was like, why don't we just do this like straight through? Let's just do a one take and run through the entire movie. And so because they felt like they were losing steam every time they would do these like 20-minute takes and then have to go back and do it again. So she was like, let's just run through the whole thing. Once they did that, they basically just ended up doing that over and over again, like just going through it in one long take and then, taking the parts that worked the best and splicing things together and kind of finding the movie as it went along, based on how the characters bounced off of each other and which I think is really cool and feels of a piece with the other found footage stuff that we've talked about in terms of kind of just like constructing the movie based on how the actors interact with each other. And they all had a real group chat text that they all used to talk to each other. And then for like a year after the movie, they all continued the group chat and stayed friends. And so
that's cool.
I feel like you can feel that in the movie. Like it feels like these people actually do have like relationships with each other and do actually like go to school with each other and stuff like that.
It feels very much like a generic like MTV cast of like high school friends.
Well, the main girl, Shelly Hennig. There's a little Easter egg in this because she has a bunch of tabs open on her computer, and I was paying attention to all of that shit, and I felt like something that really impressed me about this is I felt like the details were super accurate, especially because like I've seen a lot of stuff similar to this, or like on most movies you see like somebody opens a browser and it's like goggle.org and it's like some weird knockoff. All of this, it felt like they actually, as far as they could, without making the movie impossible to shoot, they tried to get like the Skype and Mac and Facebook like interfaces to feel legitimate. Down to her tabs that are open. One of them is a Teen Wolf, the MTV show tab. She joined Teen Wolf in the season that the tab is like pointed to. So yeah, she's known for
That's funny.
the Teen Wolf show.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, and then you have Moses Storm as Mitch Russell, Renee Olstead as Jess, Will Peltz as Adam, Jacob Wesaki as Ken Smith, and Courtney Halverson as Val Rommel, and Heather Sossaman as Laura Barnes / Billy 227, and somebody called Mickey River as Dank Jimmy.
We all love Dank Jimmy, baby.
Dang, Jimmy.
Yeah, and basically they tried to audition these actors normally, and they realized that in order to figure out who would be the best in the movie, they had to audition them
Together.
on a computer. Like they had to have them on a computer, like looking at a computer and doing it that way. So they just would go sit in another room and do the audition through Skype. Yeah. So they could see, how they interacted in front of a computer and everything. And Blair's desktop, which is how we see the whole movie, is her scrolling around on the desktop. That was just the writer's desktop, and he was, like controlling what was going on and getting all that stuff set up. And
That's crazy.
It's pretty darn accurate down, except there are certain things they have to do to make the movie a little bit less overwhelming. Like whenever she's having her text chats with her boyfriend, they like mutes the Skype conversation in the background, and that kind of confused me when that was happening during the movie. It is a little weird.
And then, I mean, technically she would still be on video.
That's what I was thinking.
Then they would all be like talking to her, and she would just be completely blank. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I guess originally they had
whatever.
the conversation continuing in the background while she would be chatting, and they found that was just too distracting to watch and just overwhelming
She could be hitting
for people.
the mute button.
Yeah, I was like, she easily could have been like doing something.
It could be explained away, so it's not like it's really like something that makes your experience worse.
Nah.
If anything, it makes it better because it's not. You're able to read and not have to deal with, teenagers bitching at each other.
It was noticeable though.
But the things that I think are the strongest aspects of this movie are the concept of the cyberbullying being the whole like impetus for this haunting. Feels obviously very true to life, and especially when this came out, this was only a couple years after I think her name was Amanda Todd, a young girl who had been cyberbullied and harassed for a couple years, ended up unaliving herself, unfortunately, and it caused a big stir about cyberbullying legislation and all this stuff. And that was part of the inspiration, because this had happened to several young kids because of social media bullying.
I think about that now. Like, I know it wasn't huge when we were kids, but like now it's like nonsense. Like, people are on social media all the time. Like, it never ends. Like, you're always in contact with people, and so if you're gonna get shit on, like, you can get shit on 24/7 now.
Yeah,
like, I don't think I could have done it.
Yeah, and I was like, maybe these kids aren't evil, but the things they're doing feel like things that people I've known in school definitely would have done, and people I know in school, not to this extent, but people did some fucked up shit in terms of like, I knew people who would impersonate other people on Facebook or whatever, or MySpace, and go after and, or post, leak photos of somebody, I remember like a big ring of like, there was a big ring of like nude photos being passed around the high school of other kids at the school, and like all that stuff that just gives you like the shivers now to think about was just normal, like, internet shit. And I'm sure, it's like 10 million times worse now.
Oh, I'm
sure, there was a girl I went to school with who had troubles with like basically making friends and things like that, and somebody at the school superimposed her face with rudimentary Photoshop onto Tub Girl, which was pretty fucking terrible.
Yeah. So I think that's a really strong
terrible
premise for this. I think that the way that the story unfolds, where you're not 100% sure how culpable all of these characters are and what happened to Laura Barnes, they kind of play it throughout the movie as like, oh, is she just getting vengeance because maybe Laura Barnes was actually not a good person, and now she's just getting revenge on these people for the general bullying she went through. And then there's not a lot of like crazy gruesome horror stuff, but I think that like the emotional horror of what's going on really gets to you, because she's the ghost of Laura is kind of forcing all of these people to out the secrets that they all have, like, to show that they're all
jigsawing them.
yeah, and showing that they're all, like, honestly more successfully than Jigsaw ever did. In terms of getting all these people to realize that they've all been like shitty people to each other and cheated on each other and, you know, done all this crazy shit. And she basically is like, I'm not just going to haunt you and make you like, yeah, eventually it's going to end in you, you know, blowing your head off or sticking your face in a blender or whatever. But first I'm going to destroy your life and or like take over your Facebook accounts and post shit. And as annoying as some of those arguments got, I did like, you know, it's cool if you're going to do a computer cyber. The original title of this movie was Offline, and then they retitled it for festivals to Cybernatural. And then
I'm glad that they went away from Cybernatural.
Yeah, and then it eventually turned to Unfriended. But yeah, when these cybernatural things are happening, I'm like, I want to see her use her ghost computer powers to do some fucked up shit, and she does by taking over their accounts and having them post pictures to pit each other against the other people in the group and everything. I think all that stuff works really well, and it just continually piles on and builds tension until by the end you're like, holy, you know, what the fuck is going to happen? Like all of these people, and they're getting picked off one by one too.
And it gets started pretty early, like we were talking about earlier with some of the better examples of this genre. This movie, like they get on their call and then there's something weird going on immediately. It's within like 10 minutes, if that. They're like, what's going on here? And you're like, okay, what is going on here?
There isn't setup.
Yeah, not really. But there is enough that you care about what's going on. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't love all the characters, but I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Well, you at least get like that little
up, like,
flirty stuff between Blair and Mitch.
Yeah.
And, like, you get little things between the characters.
And her, like, whole virginity thing. Like, you know, they develop that and they plant the seed of that. And then that leads to something. You know what I mean? So I was like, that's cool that they were able to cram that much in what, like an hour and a half?
Yeah, and it's a super short movie, real easy to get through, like I said. And I mean, its best benefit is that it's relatively inoffensive when it comes to like just being an enjoyable movie.
Yeah, and I think for me also what added stress to it, and I joked about this with you guys, was just it was just the technology being shitty. Like whenever the technology would be shitty, it would stress me out. And so I thought that the like glitching was actually really effective because it adds this like creepy imagery to the people when like they're just doing normal things like leaning in toward the camera or moving around. They'll like pixelate out into these weird like, you know, things where you can't quite tell, is there maybe a ghost in there somewhere or what's going on? And
then it leads to some pretty brutal jump scares.
Yeah, and yeah, you'll have a you know, I think that the jump scares are really good, and then you have stuff where like, you know, the camera falls over when the one girl drinks bleach or has a seizure or whatever's going on, and then you get that really cool scene of like the cops coming in and you don't really know what's going on, and then like the camera kind of moves over and you see she's like dead on the ground, and it's pretty shocking, and then you get the reactions of everybody on the call like freaking out about what's happening, and they're all trying to figure out like, oh, maybe she had a seizure, she had a history of seizures and all this stuff. So I like the panic feels really authentic, and everybody kind of just like increasingly getting freaked out. It reminds me of, you know, like obviously not to this level, but something like The Thing, where it's just a bunch of people in a, even though they're all in different spaces, what feels like a confined space, all getting increasingly paranoid about each other and about what's going on. And that's always my favorite stuff, is like a group of people getting paranoid together, and, you know, monsters are due on Maple Street, you know.
Right. Tension.
Yeah. And Laura doesn't really have to do too much supernatural stuff until it's time to off the people. And then even then it's like we just get quick little glimpses of what's happening, and nothing's too crazy over the top until you get to like the obvious, you know, this is Blumhouse, so you got to have the scene at the end where she closes the computer and ghoul Laura pops up and goes, "Wah!"
That was cool though. Yeah, I don't feel like you get a lot of like the real world when you do stuff like that. I thought it was like, here's the footage and then that's it. But this is like footage plus.
Well, and stylistically it's cool because you've spent the whole movie, you know, through the perspective of her computer screen. So when she closes it and Laura's there, it's you know, it's a quality little scare.
I thought all the kills that I can't remember how the blonde woman dies, but
doesn't she do the curling iron down the throat?
Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. So they're all pretty good. I mean, the one dude, the like jockey friend, I mean he shoots himself and it's not too brutal, but how it happens is crazy fucking intense. But all the deaths really are rad.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's a horror show.
Yeah, but like the whole paper thing was like, I can't tell you, and just the tension in that scene, and then I mean, as soon as the paper's on screen, it's like, bah! I'm like, oh shit! I was like, what the fuck just happened? But then we get the blender, super cool.
Yeah.
The curling iron was brutal. I'm glad we didn't have to see it, but I'd like to see in the aftermath. The knife through the eye. I mean, that was nuts. It just, God, it was like John Wick style.
Fucking pencil. Yeah, I thought that was all handled really, really well, and super tense. And there were only a couple small things that I think were kind of unintentionally humorous. There's one line where Laura's like typing out, and she's like, "It's never have I ever, like the drinking game, but instead of getting drunk, you die." Like cheesy little stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's also supposed to be a teenager, so like that all checks out. Like teenagers say stupid fucking shit, regardless of whether or not they're a ghost or not.
Yeah, and then at first I was kind of like iffy about her kind of Googling and finding out. There's a whole article that kind of just confirms like ghosts can possess your computer, and if they do, they'll make you kill yourself and all this. But then they do a thing where like every time she tries to Google something different after that, that ends up being like the first result that keeps coming up. And so I was like, oh, like Laura is like showing her like, this is what I'm doing to you. Like, this isn't necessarily like the real authentic article about what's actually happening. It's more likely it's whatever this Laura thing is, whether it's actually Laura or a demon or whatever it is trying to psychologically torture Blair by showing like, I'm haunting your computer and I'm going to make you kill yourself. I just wished that she had done a little, Skype call and it was Vincent D'Onofrio popping up.
Yeah,
it's like,
oh, you got a computer.
Sorry,
ghoul.
you got a Laura Barnes.
You got a computer ghoul.
But I mean,
I enjoyed it. I think it's effective. I think it does exactly what it sets out to do, and I think it's a pretty good time for one of these like Blumhouse. Like, we're gonna just do something real quick.
Yeah,
They've made shittier movies with bigger budgets. So, I mean, I'd recommend it. I think it's, if you're
this movie's shitty in a different way because that girl did done shat herself.
Oh, man, if I had a nickel,
But
yes, that's where it came from.
Shit out my ass.
As opposed to where?
Your mouth, bro. You never seen South Park?
I'm gonna shit out my Blum box.
I'll make sure to take off all the wrappings of the turkey.
But in classic Blumhouse and found footage fashion, this movie was made for $1 million.
Classic.
So crazy low budget.
Yeah.
And made 62.9. Close enough. Nice. $1 million. So huge success. Enough to spin off a sequel that nobody wants to talk about.
The Dark Web.
Have you seen it?
On. I haven't. No, just because I've heard that it's not
cardboard
worth
doo-doo.
checking out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've heard it's real bad.
Yeah, but it is called Dark Web. And there are a bunch of other movies that kind of spun off of this. That Friend Request movie that I mentioned was originally, it's basically the same movie. It was originally, it was made, it is Unfriended, just made, I think, by a German production company.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it had like some German name, Unfriended, and then they re-released it as Friend Request. So.
And then obviously, like I said last week or the week before, Searching came out a little while after this. It used that kind of what was the term you described?
Screen Life.
Viewbox.
Terminally online.
I feel like while that's not a horror film, like I said, it kind of is.
Thriller, right?
It's more of like a thriller-esque type film. That movie's just really good and like really packs an emotional punch.
Yeah, but
I highly suggest to watch it. I want to check out
Hulu
the
right now.
Yeah, I want to check out the sequel that's currently in, or like the spiritual successor or whatever.
Is it called Missing?
Yeah, that's in theaters still currently, I think.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I thought Searching was great. But yeah, check out Unfriended if you haven't already. It's a good time, and it won't make you too sick because it doesn't have all the shaky cam craziness and a lot of these other found footage
movies. And it's on Netflix.
Yeah, which I was telling him I was pissed because I rented it for $3.99 because Netflix still sometimes doesn't show up in searches. So I was like, oh, I guess it's not on anything. I'm going to rent it. But hey, it wasn't a bad movie, so I'm not really that angry.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, let's move into the Outwaters.
So, Your Honor, I'd like to present my case about why I thought we should check out the Outwaters, and my theory behind why the hype around this was so big. So, I had been seeing, and I was telling John for like 2 or 3 months now, I had been seeing lots of really cool marketing for this movie called The Outwaters.
Why are you doing Law & Order?
because he said he's pleading his case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Produced by Dick Wolf.
in the criminal justice system. So they had a really cool Twitter account that was always like posting weird, creepy stuff. Mike Flanagan had posted a review about how he thought it was like a cool descent into hell, like mind fuck thing. And I was like, oh, Mike Flanagan likes it. It's got to be great. And on top of that, I just thought all of the posters and artwork for this looked super dope. And a lot of people were saying it's the next Skinamarink. And I personally really, really liked Skinamarink. We may talk about it at some point in the near future, but
like the next Skinamarink, when Skinamarink hasn't even like fully come to fruition.
You're
yet,
telling me,
like,
brother.
yeah,
telling
that's
me.
how quick this
Yeah,
this
weird.
hype train is it's, you know.
I've talked to people that didn't really care for either of them.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of reviews that are like that. But a little bit of actual background on the movie itself. This is a 2022 American horror film, written, directed, starring, produced by
Edited,
Robbie,
I think, right?
edited, music by Robbie Banfitch. It's presented as found footage from memory cards belonging to a group of friends who venture into the Mojave Desert to shoot a music video where they encounter mysterious and threatening phenomena. And that's the entire movie. But if you want to avoid spoilers for this, since it is new, it is available on Screambox.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to check it out, you can also rent it for, I think, like $5.99. I think that's what I ended up doing because I don't have Screambox.
I did a 7-day trial for Screambox through Prime. Worked out super great.
Oh, you can do that now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll keep that in mind. But briefly, before we go into details about it, would we recommend it? Would you guys recommend it to people? Are there conditions for your recommendation?
I'm
don't
gonna
think so.
just say no.
Yeah.
I think that for me, it takes too long to set up. And when it does set up, the payoff is mostly just aftermath and not really what's happening in the now.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would call the setup. Like the thing about this movie is that differs from a lot of the other ones we watched is that there is a story laid out for us, and although it's not always like super straightforward or clear, or all the time is very well thought out. Like you get Blair Witch, and it's like, yeah, it's people in the woods. They get lost. They're trying to get their way out. Shit goes bad. Like there's a through line of what the basic idea of that movie is. This movie is people are in a desert, and then something happens, and it's not
a series of some things.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
like what, and so for me, that's why I wouldn't recommend it, because there's not really like a story here. From what you can tell, just watching it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this might be a good time if you can see it in the theater, if that's possible, just in terms of it being very loud. Mm-hmm. And most of the time you will be sitting in pitch darkness with very loud, overblown screams and thunder cracks and all that stuff. And if you are the type of horror fan, which I'm not besmirching this type of horror fan, but if you are a horror fan who just wants to go to a loud, dark theater and get, jump scared for an hour or whatever, there's enough of that in this. And
Were there jump scares?
well, there's just a lot of loud noise. It's just there's a lot of loud noise. So if you are just not prepared for just loud sounds, then
okay.
you might get spooked by it. But I was even, like I said, I was curious if maybe somebody who was professed as being really, really into the found footage genre would feel totally differently about this. But I mentioned Erica earlier from Horror Cafe. She went and checked this out. Or watched it on Screambox and got back to me and felt pretty much the same as we did, which was what? But she said that several days later she's still thinking about it, and I kind of feel that way where it's lingered with me. But for me, I think it's because I keep asking myself, like,
What the fuck did I just sit through?
like, did I miss something? And
Yeah,
I have to
but-
keep telling myself that no, I don't think I did. And I was telling John before we started the show that, like, I am no stranger to weird as fuck confusing movies. I'm a massive David Lynch fan.
I think we all were into Primer.
Yeah, like I love dissecting
I haven't
movies
seen
like
Primer,
that.
but I really liked.
Didn't we talk about it on the show?
Upstream Color.
Well,
like-
we talked about Upstream Color. Primer.
that's what I
Primer
meant.
is on my sci-fi misses.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, so I mean, both same director
Right,
and,
yeah.
and very confusing, convoluted movies that when you
Very
pick
confusing
them
person.
apart, there does feel like there is intention. And the comparison
Yes.
to Skinamarink, for me, it And I'll cut to the chase. No, I don't recommend that you go out, race out and see this. Really, if you're in the mood for found footage, I think there are a lot more like batshit off the wall found footage movies that you can check out. Most of the other ones that do a similar thing, like Blair Witch Project, but I really liked Skinamarink, and while that movie is a lot of just shots of dark corners and hallways, it felt like there was an intention and a reason behind it being made in that weird, strange way. This, to me, felt like there was no intention outside of, I want to get my friends together and put a bunch of creepy imagery together. And that's pretty much what the background of this movie is. He made it with a group of his friends. None of them are actors. They're just his friends. And his mom plays his mom in the movie, and he wanted to write and direct and do all of that, so there's also no like oversight from anybody else or anybody else saying, hey, maybe you should do this differently. And reading interviews with him, it really sounds like they kind of just went out to the desert and shot a bunch of random stuff. Like, he talks in interviews about how he had no intention of filming like the donkeys or the mules or whatever that are in the movie, and one of his friends was just like, oh, they're pretty, you should shoot them. But they have no like bearing on the movie or reason for being there or really anything. It's just, here's a random thing in the desert for you to shoot.
I was trying to like, are they becoming snakes?
Well,
are the snakes?
We have not
gone into spoiler territory.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So spoilers here. People may be becoming snakes. Who knows?
Yeah.
But you don't need to check it out. So go ahead and just listen to the spoilers now.
So that's what I was like. Are these snakes now being turned inside out because they did show some snakes earlier, or are the snakes the slithering things some kind of like extraterrestrial like parasite tremor type thing? Now they're turning into those, but then are they turning into donkeys? Because then we encounter what I think is some kind of beast at some point, but you can't see anything to really know. And I was like, is that a dead donkey turning inside out? Is that something turning into? I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Every time I felt like, honestly, this entire movie could be like, the experience of watching it, I feel like can be summed up by the scene where he's chasing the girl through the desert and he just can't catch her and she keeps running away and he keeps trying to catch her and she just keeps getting further and further away. That's how it felt, trying to understand what this movie was trying to do or what it was about, is like you're chasing this thing that every time you get close and you think you're about to grab what the movie is about, like, oh, it's a time loop, oh, it's a Lovecraft monster or whatever, it just throws in a random sequence of other scenes that just were just like, we thought this might be kind of creepy or interesting. And overall, my experience was one of just intense frustration once the nighttime stuff started. So for the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be mad about a found footage movie that, just like most other found footage movies, even like Blair Witch, which is one of my, is probably my favorite found footage movie, does spend a decent amount of time just following these characters wandering around talking in the woods. And in this, at least, I felt that the first hour or whatever, and that's the other big problem with this movie, is that it's 110 minutes for absolutely no fucking reason. But
no, it's 110. Okay,
110. So yeah, almost 2 hours. So
yeah.
It the first about hour, I thought was filmed really beautifully.
Yeah.
Like,
so it takes 37 minutes exactly before like that first like thunderstorm, and I was like, okay, this is the first interesting thing that's happened, and then
you get like a couple earthquakes.
I think that's
briefly.
the first. Yeah, but I think that's really the first thing that you're like, okay, something's going on, and then it takes another 20 minutes before the shit starts like popping off, and at that point you're like 57 minutes into this movie, which is fucking crazy.
And so I'm sitting here fucking staring at the screen, trying to figure out, like, is there shit I'm missing? Are there little, like, fucking ghosts or ghoulies or whatever that are hanging out in the screen somewhere?
You
the
wouldn't
answer's
know.
no, brother. Nothing's happening.
I wanted to turn it off because like this is just black screen.
It was actively pissing me off because I was telling him I'm looking at my 60-inch TV and I can see a fist-sized portion of the screen for an entire hour of the movie.
Well, yeah, so it's like it's either completely black with nothing on the screen, just yelling or whatever the fuck, and then sometimes you get this tiny light, and it's like, okay, well, now
and
we're
half
getting
the time
something,
he's
and
just
you can't
pointing it
even
at the
see.
ground while he's running.
Yeah.
So even though the light's on, you can't tell what the fuck's going on. And those scenes will go on for 5 straight minutes of him just running around with shit pointed at the ground, or he's walking through the desert with it pointed at his feet, so we can just see him throw up on his feet and then walk around naked.
Oh no, got to make sure that he's in frame so that way he can cut his own fucking dick off.
At least, like, yeah, that's brutal, but I was like, okay, at least something's happening.
That's how I felt. I was like, finally something's happening.
And then the movie is over.
And then we get his intestines, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, give me a little punch. But then it's like, is it a time loop? Because now we're running into ourselves in different spots, and now we're back at home. And
yeah, so for the first hour of this movie, I was like, it's beautifully shot. For found footage, I thought all of the the sky looked great. I thought
it's very artistically done.
Yeah, and there's cool like upside down shots and stuff. The diegetic music I thought was pretty good, like just having the music kind of incorporated into their road trip. But I was like, okay, if we're gonna spend an hour with these characters, I want to feel like these are characters that you spent an hour on because it's important that we get to know them and like what their whole deal is. And basically all we get is just the same repeated lines from every character, which is the music video girl misses her mom, keeps talking about her mom, my mom, my mom, my mom. And then outside of that, there's really no character development for anybody else in the movie.
It's just musician girl, makeup girl, brother, and dude with camera. Like there just isn't anything there with those characters. They don't. There's no room for them to develop or to grow in any way, shape, or form. They all just kind of seem like boring, bland white people.
Well, and then they
and
all
you
get.
don't always need that. Like with Blair Witch, like there's not a ton of character development there, but at least there's some kind of direction and some kind of entertainment that you can take away from that.
And again, Blair Witch isn't 2 hours long.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like if you're going to spend an hour on these characters and not have anything interesting or eventful happen, at least have there be a reason for it outside of what it really feels like is you shot a bunch of footage on a road trip to the desert and then we're like, I'm just going to use everything I shot because it's my friends and we got some gorgeous shots out in the desert. And like, yeah, the desert's a really cool place to set a movie like this. I love the idea of, you go out to the middle of nowhere and you know maybe something weird is going to happen out there, and it could be evil hillbillies. For a second I was like, oh, are there weird like Wolf Creek people out here who want to kill them, because we find out that there's like some bloody figure in the distance, and then we see there's an axe at the top of a hill, and then the bloody figure. I mean, I loved the moment when the figure, I guess, attacks the main character, and then when he goes into the tent and he's like, my head's raining because he's like bleeding from the wound or whatever. I was like, oh, that's cool. And like really creepy. So there's that whole thing, and you're like, okay, what's going on there? And then when they're first driving like toward the desert, there's the weird like outside of the car, and I was like, oh, so did they just travel into an alternate dimension or something? And that seems to be what it was kind of trying to go for. Like, as far as I could piece together, the idea was that they somehow traveled into an alternate dimension in the desert where there are some sort of Lovecraft creatures.
Is that the snakes?
The snakes and whatever weird goopy thing he sees later with the flashlight.
It's like beast.
Yeah, the beast or whatever. And in this alternate dimension, time and space don't work normally, so it drives him insane to the point that he mutilates himself and then ends up being the one who attacks his own group. So when they're all running screaming after he's been attacked by the Axeman, what I picked up is that they're all running and freaking out because he's the one that attacked them. So they're all confused as to like what the fuck is going on, because they're like, you just attacked us with an axe, but then you're over here. So there's this weird time stuff, because then later on he's like standing far away when he's like the insane bloody version of himself, and he sees his friends in the past like walking by, and he's like trying to shout to them, and we had seen that scene from the other perspective earlier. So I was kind of trying to piece together like, okay, there's some sort of time travel thing going on, but then there's this weird thing about like you keep seeing him be like reborn. He keeps like going through this weird like amniotic fluid, and then he goes, at one point he goes through like a Terrence Malick Tree of Life like tunnel of lights, and comes out. But
then when he like meets up with some people, like they don't seem to interact at all. He's just like watching them, and they're just like screaming, and then it'll go to something else, and I'm like, and then at one point he starts traveling like away from the desert. He shows up like at his mom's house, and I saw somebody on Reddit, because I went on Reddit at least to try to see if anybody else could maybe understand what the fuck this was about. And somebody said, that
like,
there is something to figure out that this guy actually has and knows what he made, or do you think that it's just
No,
random.
so yeah, I mean, somebody said that maybe like the reason they weren't really interacting with him when he was like traveling into the past and stuff is that he's kind of like a ghost or like outside of time and space, so they can't like really interact with him. But then there are other parts where it seems like characters are, and then there's just a bunch of things like then everybody's just covered in blood for some reason, and he keeps like walking into the tent, and there's just the one chick's just naked and rubbing blood all over herself and screaming, and you know, it's just very confusing. But I read some interviews with the director because I wanted to see if maybe that would shine some light, literally, on what the fuck was going on in this movie. And he said that his biggest inspiration was Jaws.
Okay.
So I guess he took the whole not showing the bad thing like super fucking literally, of just like, well, I mean, if Jaws had just shown a black screen for an hour, then you definitely wouldn't have seen what the shark was doing.
There's enough shark in Jaws that it's satisfying.
Yeah, so Jaws was his biggest influence, and the entire idea just spawned from the title came into his head, because Outwaters is not a word and doesn't even make sense as to what that is supposed to be about in this movie. But the word Outwaters just came to him one day, and he was like, I need to make a movie around that word. So he just from the title worked backwards or whatever to come up with the idea.
You should take that idea and put it right back in Waters. You know what I'm saying?
His butt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he said his biggest inspirations were Willow Creek, The Blair Witch Project, and Terrence Malick's Tree of Life.
What you've been able to see, what are people liking about it? Like the people that are raving and ranting about it, like what is it that they're into?
That it's nuts and you don't know what's going on. Like some people are just into a movie that
is incomprehensible,
is loud and incomprehensible and bloody, I guess. Like that's the thing, is like, yeah, this movie is bloody, but you can only see, like I said, a fist-sized portion of it on your screen the entire time. So it doesn't even get to show off the gore. And I get it. This movie, it was $15,000 to make, and if there were budget constraints, I can see where he felt like maybe he needed to limit how much you could see of certain things. But then
what was that other movie that was $15,000 to make that was found footage and we watched recently? Oh yeah, Paranormal Activity. Yeah, I know they tacked on another fucking 20 or whatever.
It was $200,000 to
that
shoot
was just
5 minutes of fucking film.
So I mean, like,
but then when he's in interviews, they ask him like, "Oh, what was the toughest part of making the movie?" And it honestly, from what he says in interviews, it just sounds like money. You know, he was just like, "Oh, any of the props I needed, I'd look up YouTube tutorials, we'd build them on the cheap, or I'd order stuff online from people who made props, and none of it was very expensive." So I'm like, "Well, where did the budget go? You filmed in the desert, which you don't need to pay for. You used your friends." Like, where did the money go? Where did the $15,000 go? Because you're not even shooting on a super nice camera. Like, you're shooting on a GoPro, basically.
oh really?
So, yeah. I don't... And you brought up a good point where it's... I feel like there's only so far the excuse that it's low budget can take you, and there's only so far that the excuse of, oh, I just wanted to make a movie with my friends. Like, I commend that anytime it happens. I'm like, cool. Totally. And in all of his interviews, he sounds like he basically is like, just, hey, if you got a group of friends and you want to go make a movie, go make a movie. Don't let anybody tell you any different. Go make what you want to make. Do whatever
Fair.
It is.
Valid.
And that's totally fair. And he was obviously very passionate about whatever this idea was supposed to be, and he wanted to make it. And his friends wanted to help him make it, and that's cool. But that doesn't mean that I have to say, like, well, I mean, because it was $15,000 and you made it with your friends, I'll give it a pass. I'm like,
dude, take that $15,000 and make something make something that's like,
and give it to me.
like 20 minutes. And make something that's a fucking banger.
Well, a lot of people in reviews I read said this would be a great short film.
Yeah, there's concepts there that work. There's some really weird, fucked up shit. I'm cool with this, but take that $20,000 and make that 20 minutes actually a functional short film, instead of trying to bloat this half-assed concept out to almost 2 hours of length and not tell anything. You haven't shown us anything. And you like the explanation of half of the movie is darkness. It's just unacceptable.
Well, and most of the rave reviews I've seen have been around the sound design.
Some of that is pretty like jarring. I mean, I watched it, with headphones on to get kind of more immersed in it, and like the voice acting and some of the sound design, and like I love the subtleties of like having the music going throughout, like not only just playing music, but also having them all kind of humming things throughout the movie. I like that shit. I thought all that stuff was super cool, and it went nowhere, man. Come on, like find a way to tie it back to the music, or add some kind of folklore that creates this process that's happening. But they don't do enough.
And I do feel like he knows how to shoot like.
Oh yeah, it's beautifully shot.
Yeah, and you can tell that
aside from the floor and the
and all that stuff is like
light.
I know that was intentional because I'm sure he felt like that would be an interesting like new spin on the found footage thing. Is like, what if you could? And I've even said this to friends. I think maybe you and Tone, like when we've been, when we were running around Yosemite in the dark, like. I've always had this thought of, I find it way scarier when you're walking around in the dark with a flashlight, because then you have that focused area of light where if something were to pop into that, it would stop your heart, as opposed to if you're in complete darkness, it's like, well, yeah, I can't see anything anyway. To me, it's scarier to have the flashlight on, and maybe that's where he was coming from, but it just doesn't execute the way that I'm sure he felt it would or intended for it to. But all the first hour shows me, okay, this guy knows how to put together a movie. And so I am interested to see what he does going forward, because this definitely does feel like, okay, you had a bunch of ideas. Because you even get the thing where then he randomly toward the end finds a sign that shows that maybe this was a government experiment area or like an alien thing. So it's like he had a million ideas for what Outwaters could be about. He had a title, he had an aesthetic, he wanted to do it in the desert, and just could not pare down his million ideas into like 3 or 4 main plot elements that would all tie together, and
you get there and actually
and I love all the things that are involved, like time loops, Lovecraft stuff, the blood, the gore. I thought the opening scene of this, where it's just the phone call, was fucking terrifying.
I loved the audio with the double voices and stuff too. I love that shit.
Yeah, and the woman just like just screaming, and the operator just like, and then just Outwaters, and I was like, oh shit, we're in for some cool. And then
yeah, and then I was asleep 45 minutes later.
Did you fall asleep?
I didn't actually fall asleep, but there were a couple times where I was like,
What I was gonna say earlier is that I think a big reason why this got so much hype is that it was produced by Bloody Disgusting. And while I love Bloody Disgusting, it's where most of our Chop Talk segment comes from every week, and I think they do great work. I do think that this is a case of they had the money to spare to make sure this had a really cool like underground marketing campaign, and that was enough to get it in front of a lot of and Screenbox is their service. So they really invested a lot into going, hey, Shudder had Skinamarink. This is our Skinamarink, and so we're gonna really try to push that as this. And I don't think anybody, especially with it being on Screenbox, would have fucking cared or seen this movie, and probably would have checked the reviews 6 months later or a year later and seen this isn't doing very well in reviews, and gone, I'm not gonna waste my time. But I think a lot of people are going to go see it in theaters. I was reading reviews of people saying like, yeah, I drove like 3 hours to see this because the hype was so crazy, and I was so disappointed. And that's the biggest word I've seen in so many reviews is so disappointed by this, because everybody had this huge inflated
I didn't have a ton of hype for it.
Well, I mean, you're not online, so
no, I know, but I'm saying like I was still disappointed. I mean, we talk a lot about that, where it's like the hype can sometimes ruin a movie for you. I didn't have hype, and it still ruined the movie for me.
Yeah, I also didn't have a lot of hype. I didn't know it existed until you said the words last week. But I do think that there was hype that built for me because of that phone call, and then because of how artfully done it is for like the first 20 minutes or so. I was like, okay, like you've got my attention. Like let's do some cool shit. And then the cool shit just doesn't come. Yeah. Like I said, I think there's a lot of concepts here that could work if, like you said, we're pared down to a handful instead of an entire fucking shopping cart's worth. There's not enough that's focused on everything. Similar to the camera, how the camera has nothing in its sight line because of how blown out the focus is of this story. You really don't get any details, and details are where most films live.
Yeah. I do think, in conclusion, because we've gone on long enough, I think, for the Outwaters.
Yeah.
In conclusion, I think that this movie is kind of a weirdly fitting cap-off to Found Footage February, because I think it takes all of the worst elements, the worst, most annoying elements of the found footage genre, and somehow finds a way to pack them all into these 2 hours. You get the annoying paper thin characters, you get the hour of slow build up nothingness, you get the
Wire still recording.
you get the why we're still recording. Oh, that was another thing was, I had heard people saying the theory that maybe they were on on acid or something, and that's how even Erica said in our conversation.
I did kind of get climax vibes a little bit.
Yeah, and it was like that would make sense if this wasn't a found footage movie. It's already been established that these are memory cards that have been collected in some sort of evidence by police. So by saying this is found footage, you are saying that everything that's happening is actually happening to the character who's filming it, because you can't take drugs and then film your experience on a camera. So
I drugged my camera. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, so I was like, anyway, but and it has the disorienting the camera work at the end where you can't tell what's going on and you're almost sick watching it, and just the overblown noise and the all the stupid ambiguity, like, oh, Blair Witch was ambiguous. How
Hold
about
my beer.
Literally no moment of my movie makes any sense. So anyway, that's the Outwaters. Don't check it out. Look at the posters though, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, and that'll wrap it up for Found Footage February and for our episode this week. And next week we are getting into March Madness.
Going back to the desert, baby.
Yeah, which is going to entail us watching all 4 Mad Max movies and probably a little bit extra because Scream 6 does come out next month, which
Holy
sounds fucking crazy.
Shit, Scrisixum?
Scrisixum.
I think there's some other things that come out in that time window, and maybe some things that we've missed. So we may be shaking the old dust off of Final Cut a couple of times next month as well to catch up on some things we've missed.
Sharpening our blades for Final Cut. I did a better one.
Just enough.
So yeah, that'll be Mad Max. Mad
Road
Max,
Warrior.
The Road Warrior. Mad Max, Beyond Thunderdome. Mad Max, The Furry Road. That's where Mad Max is a furry.
So tune in for that next week. We will see you then. I've been Tone.
I've been John.
And I've been... I want my mommy. Internet darling Anthony.
Right on. Let's cut your dick off.
Keep it creepy.
Thanks.